who is the Chief Surgeon, Central Hospital, Garden Reach, and Dr. Amitabh Ray, who is the Consultant Oncologist at TMH Jamshedpur. He has done his MD and DNB in Radio-Oncology and post-MD Fellowship in Neuro-Oncology from TMH Mumbai. He has more than 25 papers in national and international journals to his credit.
Okay. This is it, right? The malignant diseases where the survival rate is near normal and the quality of life is normal. And to give justice to this topic, we have Dr. Ashwini Kumar Malhotra, and he actually needs no introduction. He has been working in this central hospital since 20 years, had his training in oncology from TMH Mumbai, and then he's performing all the difficult surgeries in oncology in this hospital, and he's in a lot of problems. Dr. Malhotra, please.
Okay. Thank you for the kind words. Respected chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen, I would be talking about some of the advances that have taken place in the field of breast cancer. Actually, when I was asked to speak on this topic, I actually was wondering as to what should one consider an advance. And it was then that I realized that I would like to talk about the kind of advances that have taken place as I have seen them over the last 25 years that I have been practicing in this subject. And therefore, I think the take-home messages would be twofold in this. One, of course, would be some of the updates which have taken place during the last quarter of a century. But even more importantly, for the younger surgeons, the younger members of this audience, it is extremely important to upgrade one's skills and update one's knowledge. Because as you shall see, if you do not do that, then during the course of a single career, when you are supposed to be at the peak of your career, you may find yourself in obsolescence. That is the kind of half-life of medical education these days. So over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I would like to walk you through some of the advances that have taken place over the last quarter of a century. Breast cancer, as you know, is an exceedingly important problem, and more than 1 million women worldwide are diagnosed every year. The mortality rate is approximately 450,000 deaths per year globally. It is an increasingly difficult problem even in India. It is the most common cancer for women in metropolitan cities, and the incidence is even picking up in rural India, though it is still much lower than in the West. We have a problem of late presentation. As you can see in the United States, the overall 5-year survival has increased from 75% in the 70s to approximately 90% today. Out of every 100 women with breast cancer in the United States, about 89 women are likely to survive for the next 5 years. But the same scenario does not hold true in India, where the overall 5-year survival is less than 60%. And the reason for that is that more than 50% of our patients present in stages 3 and 4. So as regards the updates that have happened, I would be concentrating on diagnosis and screening, the classification and the treatment, which would include surgery and radiotherapy, which are the two loco-regional forms of treatment for breast cancer, and systemic therapy, which has come a long way over the last 25 years in both hormonal chemotherapy and the new kid on the block being targeted therapies. So what about diagnosis and screening, which is our main bugbear? Breast self-examination. A lot has been talked about teaching women how to palpate their breasts. Some large studies have taken place, particularly in Russia and China, and they have found that breast self-examination by itself does not really decrease the morbidity does not decrease breast cancer mortality. So is it useless? Should we then push it into the dustbin? No. I think in a country like ours, asking women or promoting breast self-examination in women is important because it does promote awareness about breast cancer. And the kind of lesions that we often see will certainly be downstaged somewhat. But I think one which is most important in our country, most relevant in our country, could be a clinical breast examination. Now, what do you mean by a clinical breast examination? It means examination of the women's breast 1 yearly by either a trained nurse or a doctor who is reasonably trained in palpating the breast, looking for lumps. And I think in our country, in a resource constrained scenario, I think a clinical breast examination, if it can be made part of a public health program, it can actually downstage breast cancers and help us see this disease in lower stages. The gold standard of breast cancer screening is mammography. And in Western countries where the incidence of breast cancer is high, breast cancer screening is there in almost all civilized countries. It starts at the age of 50 in many countries. It starts at the age of 40 in other countries. But breast cancer screening is part of their public health care program in all Western countries. Is it feasible in our country? At the moment, certainly not. And the reasons why it is not feasible is, one, because it is extremely costly. Two, because despite the number of breast cancer cases that we see, it is still much lower than in the Western countries. And thirdly, I think we have a lot of other healthcare problems which also take a share of the healthcare pie. The point that I would like to highlight in a mixed gathering like this is, what we have in our country is opportunistic screening, where a lady can come to you either with some complaints or even just otherwise and wants a mammography. She has some complaints and the doctor prescribes a mammography. I would like to tell you two things here. One, that if a lady is very young, it is very unlikely that she has breast cancer. And more importantly, it is very, very unlikely that the mammography is going to pick it up. I have seen doctors actually prescribing mammography for ladies as young as 25 and 30 years old. This is completely irrelevant in a country like ours because these breasts are very dense and the mammography is very unlikely to pick up cancers. Secondly, I think we must also be very aware of the fact that reading mammograms is not easy. And most centers in our country which do a few mammograms every year are going to give you results which are always going to be ambiguous. So young patients, please do not prescribe mammograms in a hurry, and do not prescribe mammograms to any neighborhood mammography machine, because in my experience and in the experience of oncologists like us, the results are always going to be extremely ambiguous. What about the role of course, now we have digital mammography which has come in, and digital mammography is more expensive, but the advantage of digital mammography is that since we have the computer screen, we can actually enlarge portions of the mammogram which are suspicious, and thereby we can expect better results. A few words on MRI. So what is the role of MRI in breast cancer screening? As I just mentioned, the MRI for breast cancer screening or breast screening is not commonly available. The ordinary MRI machines may not be fully equipped to do a proper breast cancer screening MRI. The other point that I would like to mention is, MRI is the advantage of the MRI is that it is good in young breasts, in dense breasts. It is extremely sensitive. But what is the disadvantage? Lack of availability, expensive, but more importantly, the advantage is the disadvantage. It is extremely sensitive. So it picks up a lot of false positive lesions. And once it picks up all kinds of false positive lesions, then it becomes very difficult to manage these lesions. Because if you have a lesion detected on MRI, which has not been detected on mammogram, then what do? It is not palpable. So MRI guided biopsies can be done only in highly specialized machines which are not available. So what is the role of MRI as of today? Well, it can be done in patients who have a strong family history of breast cancer, who have known BRCA1 or BRCA2 positivity, because these are patients who get breast cancers very early. So these are some of the selected patients in whom one can use an MRI in order to detect breast cancer, where we have to start the screening process at about the age of 30. Otherwise, the MRI as of today does not have a role in the routine screening of breast cancer cases. Genetic screening, of course, in patients with strong family history, BRCA1 and BRCA2 screening is available to us now. So these are some of the MRI pictures that we have. Okay. So as you can see, this is an advanced malignant speculation here. This is a benign speculated appearance. So these are the kind of a few pictures that we picked up. This is a benign calcification. Whereas if you look at these are malignant microcalcifications. So these are the ways in which they can be identified. This is a malignant mass and this is a benign mass. Next, I will move on to the classification. Now, for those, when we were in medical school, we were generally taught about Schiras types, atrophic Schiras types. These were the kind of classifications that we were used to. Ductal, lobular, morphologic like Schiras, phylloides, medullary, etc. But now there has been a quantum shift and we are in a stage of transition. It is quite possible that 5 years down the road, these earlier classifications would be replaced by the molecular classifications that we are dealing with. And at present, the molecular classification of breast cancer is luminal A, luminal B, HER2/neu overamplified, basal or triple negative type, and unclassified. So you can imagine that when we were students, we never had this kind of classification. But if today we are going to treat breast cancer, then therapeutically speaking, this is the kind of division that we would actually resort to. Luminal A are the cases where the ER is positive with a low proliferation index. Luminal B, ER positive with a high proliferation index. HER2/neu overamplification, basal where all three are not amplified, and the unclassified types. So this is the kind of classification, molecular classification towards which we have been shifting. Now finally moving on to the treatment, as I told you that there are two types of treatment. One is the loco-regional, which is represented by surgical as well as radiotherapy, and the systemic therapy, which I will deal with later. The modern surgical management of breast cancer actually began with Halsted's radical mastectomy, which he defined in 1894. In fact, when I joined the Department of Surgery, when we started surgery, we were seeing quite a few of these classical Halsted's radical mastectomies being performed. What they did was they removed the whole breast, they removed the axilla, as well as the pectoralis major muscles. The result was quite cosmetically disfiguring, but the results of Halsted, since they were good, that was considered the gold standard for a long, long time. In fact, surgeons went further and further ahead. They started doing extended radical mastectomies. They started removing internal mammary nodes. They started removing supraclavicular nodes. They started removing portions of the chest wall. But subsequently they realized that more was not more was actually becoming less. The morbidity and mortality were increasing, but the results were not improved. And hence, Halsted's classical radical mastectomy remained the gold standard for a long time. Till Patey presented his paper in about 1948. Of course, it became popular much later. Now, what did Patey do for the modified radical mastectomy was that he did not remove the pectoralis major muscle. And that actually improved the cosmetic and the functional outcome of these patients. Otherwise, the breast, the pectoralis minor and the axilla were all treated. Now, this was an evolutionary advance in terms of its surgical outcomes or technique. But in terms of oncological philosophy, I think it was a revolutionary advance. Because what Halsted thought was that this breast cancer had to be removed en bloc. The breast tumor, the axilla, and everything in between had to be removed as one piece. And only if you could remove it in one piece could you bring about a cure. When Patey started modified radical mastectomy and demonstrated that the results were equal, it was not just an evolutionary jump in terms of cosmetic and functional outcome, but what he debunked was this en bloc theory. because the pectoralis major muscle and its lymphatics were being left behind. So the en bloc theory that it had to be removed in one piece was actually debunked by Petrie, and I think that was what was the revolutionary advance of this method of surgical treatment. And of course, then we have, with advances in radiation techniques, we have Umberto Veronesi at the National Cancer Institute in Milan in 1990. He came up with the breast conservation surgery. And that was known as QUAT to begin with, where one quadrant of the breast was removed along with the axillary clearance and radiotherapy. And this was another revolutionary advance in the management of breast cancer, the surgical management, because this actually meant that the lady could now preserve her breast. We sometimes tend to feel, in fact, it was only the other day, a lady of 75 years of age had come, her son was in the US, she had come to show me in the clinic. She had already had an MRM done on the one side about 5 years ago, and she had presented with a mammographically detected lesion on the other side. His son actually came and told me that even if she has to undergo a mastectomy, don't tell her that, well, just because she's 75 years old, she needs to have a bilateral mastectomy done, because she would take strong exception to that. The only reason why she can be told that is that, well, she will have to undergo radiation, and if she's prepared for that, only then breast conservation surgery should be advised. So it is not that every lady is ready to give up her breast very easily, though it is true that in our country, mastectomies are still much more commonly practiced than breast conservation surgery because of lack of facilities, and more importantly, because we still get cancers at a very advanced stage. Oncoplastic surgery has also come into a big way, and in fact is now a separate specialty whereby breast reconstructions are being done, and we are doing a lot of breast reconstructions even in our hospital here. And even with breast conservation surgery, where we remove only a small part of the breast, various techniques and small flaps are being devised so as to preserve the full cosmetic this thing of the breast. So breast reconstruction can be used by various means like the latissimus dorsi flap, pedicle tram flap, free tram, filler LDs, and with the use of silicone and saline filled prostheses. Now what about the management of the axilla? Earlier it was believed that the axilla was to be removed the axillary lymph nodes was to be removed in all cases. But it actually means a lot of morbidity. Morbidity in the sense it can cause seroma formation. There could be some pain in the upper arm because of the removal of some of the nerves. And moreover, lymphedema can also be a troublesome problem. In fact, the same lady whom I am referring to, the 75-year-old lady, when she had undergone the MRM at Mumbai about 5 years ago, she says the most troublesome part of it was the seroma which had formed, for which she had to go to the hospital twice a week to get it aspirated for about a month. So there are problems with axillary dissection, and now the concept is that if the axilla is not palpable, if the axillary lymph nodes are not palpable, then a sentinel node biopsy is to be performed. However, there would still be a word of caution in these patients, because a sentinel node biopsy may be a small surgical procedure, but it does require skills, and every institution which practices sentinel node biopsy has to validate its data, because if you have false negatives, then you can end up not treating a positive axilla. In Western countries, where the number of negative axillas are much higher, the stage 1 and 2 is much higher, this is an extremely important situation, but for negative axillas in our country, the percentage of patients is much lower. And therefore, though sentinel node biopsy is now the gold standard for a negative axilla, I think it should be practiced only in institutions which have validated their own data of sentinel nodes. Otherwise, some large institutions like TMH and All India Institute also have very high false negative rates, and therefore they are revising their concept of sentinel node biopsies. Advances in radiotherapy are extremely important, and in fact it is advances in radiotherapy which have actually brought about breast conservation surgery, because mere removal of the lump without radiation would actually result in much higher rates of local recurrences. Besides this, there are other methods, the different technologies have evolved, like 3D conformal radiation, IMRT, IGRT, etc., which can deliver radiation to the breast without actually damaging the surrounding tissues. And that is extremely important, particularly on the left side where the heart also has to be protected. The concept of partial breast irradiation, in fact hypofractionation or hypofractionation is also an important concept which is picked up, because instead of the usual 5 weeks that are given for breast radiation, you can actually finish it in 3 weeks. The concept of partial breast irradiation is also picking up, Mammocyte and Target being two of them. Now this is the Mammocyte, as you can see, where when you remove the lump, you just put in this balloon and catheter, and for 5 days the radiation is given through this, and within 5 days the radiation is completed. So instead of 5 weeks, they go up to 5 days. I would like to highlight this Target because the person who has actually invented this was a resident with me actually at Tata Memorial Hospital in Bombay in 95-96, and at the University College of London, Jayant Vaidya is the one who has actually developed this technique. And here you can see this is a ball-like thing which actually fits into the breast tumor cavity, and in the operation room itself you can deliver the radiation dose, and patient does not require to get radiated subsequently. It is accepted for low-risk cases, but for high-risk cases it can be used as a tumor boost. It is still in process of evolution, but if this actually succeeds, then you can finish off the radiation at the time of surgery within the operation theatre itself, and the patient doesn't have to come to you for the next 5-6 weeks. Now, systemic therapy has also shown rapid advances, both in the adjuvant setting, in the neoadjuvant setting, as well as in the metastatic setting. And I think the systemic therapy, actually it was Bernard Fisher who held a view that was completely contrary to that of Halsted. He said that breast cancer from the very beginning, just 2 minutes. Breast cancer from the very beginning was a systemic disease, and therefore required systemic treatment much more than the local treatment, loco-regional treatment. Of course, at the moment I think we are somewhere in between the two, and loco-regional treatment is important, so is systemic therapy. So these are the various chemotherapeutic drugs which are used both in the adjuvant, metastatic, as well as in the neoadjuvant setting. The only point that I would like to raise is, mention is that there are patients in whom we can avoid chemotherapy, and now the focus is, instead of giving chemotherapy to all patients, try to identify patients in whom we can actually avoid giving chemotherapy, and for which we have a number of tools to guide us. We have the adjuvant online and certain microgene arrays like the Oncotype DX and the Mammoprint, which can actually help us to tell us in early cases whether or not we can avoid giving chemotherapy to these patients. Hormonal treatment, of course, the modern era began with tamoxifen, though when I joined this field, there was oophorectomy that was being done. And different hormonal agents are used currently. Tamoxifen, which is used both in pre and postmenopausal setting. Aromatase inhibitors are to be used only in the postmenopausal setting. Anti-estrogens like fulvestrant and GnRH analogues like goserelin. Targeted therapies are the buzzword, and particularly for HER2-neu positive tumors, this is a gene which, if overamplified, causes a poor prognosis, and the response to certain chemotherapeutic agents is important. Moreover, we have now targeted therapies like trastuzumab and lapatinib, which can actually deal with these tumors which overexpress HER2-neu, and they can alter the prognosis considerably. Now, for want of time, I will not go into the various. Suffice it to say that Herceptin or trastuzumab has now been approved in the treatment of patients with in the metastatic setting, in the adjuvant setting, as well as in the neoadjuvant setting, and is actually causing an increase in response rates and overall survivals in these settings. So this is one of my favorite pictures, and it reminds me of Robert Frost's sayings that the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. So thank you all for a patient hearing. Sorry for overshooting the time, but actually my time was 30 minutes, which has been modified to 20, so that is why the time overshot. And thank you all for a patient hearing. Any questions I would read.
Thank you, Dr. Malhotra. That was a very, very short summary of what has been a fantastic career of 25 years. and request the audience to pose questions if any. So, yeah.
You have said that mammography is not advised in younger patients. In that case, what do you do?
It is not contraindicated, but what I really meant was that in younger patients with dense breasts, the chances of picking up a lesion is much less. These are the cases where one can go in for an MRI and an ultrasound as well. So these are the cases where there is a role for MRI and ultrasound as well, because if you have strong suspicion, because mammography in young dense breasts may not yield the same results in terms of accuracy as an older patient.
But we have seen in most of the cases of mammography, the report comes correlated with a higher resolution ultrasound. So why at all go for this kind of an investigation when we have to rely on another investigation to confirm it?
Yes. So as I mentioned, that the quality of mammography reporting leaves a lot to be desired in our country. There are very few centers which actually, that is why I mentioned it, that you should not send it to your neighborhood mammographer. You must understand that in countries which have public screening programs for breast cancer, you have mammographers who sit there 5 days a week, dealing with maybe 60 mammograms every week. Now, to extrapolate those kind of results with somebody who does 20 mammograms a year would not be okay. Now, ideally speaking, there is a system by which you should report mammography. That is known as the BI-RAD system. If a radiologist does not report a mammography report within the BI-RAD system, that is from 0 to 6. 0 basically means that the mammogram is not proper, it has to be repeated. And 1 is benign and 6 is confirmed malignancy, so that is the criteria. So they have to tell you exactly as to which BI-RADS category does it belong to. Is it completely benign, probably benign, just about mild suspicion of malignancy, in which case you will repeat the mammogram, or if it is strongly suspicious, you have to do a biopsy. So the mammography should be reporting in terms of BI-RADS, and accordingly you have to proceed. If a radiologist does not report a mammography report in terms of the BI-RADS, then I think you should not send him any mammography.
So what is your experience in Kolkata? Which center is doing the right procedures and is reliable?
Well, it's very difficult for me to actually talk in general about what Kolkata is doing. It's a sensitive issue.
But then we must know.
Yes, but the full field digital mammography, the ones that we have been sending, you can call it my experience, we have been sending to BP Podar, they have a full field digital mammography, and I think their reports are not bad.
Thank you.
But a lot of them are just giving reports, as you said, just correlate clinically and finish it off.
Anybody else? Yeah.
We are doing classification and giving the report, and sonomammography is always complementary. Sonomammography is always complementary. You do mammography and side by side sonography without any money, sonography has to be done. We are doing.
In fact, sonography as well as MRI, they are always complementary to mammography. As far as screening is concerned, mammography is the gold standard for breast cancer.
One very important point which I would like to point out, personal this thing is, cytology screening is a very important part in early diagnosis of breast cancers.
Which screening?
Cytology screening.
Okay.
FNACs, fine needle aspiration cytology. If you have a good pathologist, you can almost diagnose 99% accuracy. So that point was missing in your...
No. Okay. In fact, for want of time, we did not go into that. First of all, FNAC is not used as a screening tool per se, because finally you have to have some kind of lesion, either palpable or mammographically detected, because you have to do whatever you do, whether you do a true-cut core needle biopsy or an FNAC, you have to do it from somewhere. So it is not a screening tool, by itself. The other point is that FNAC is now gradually yielding way to core needle biopsies. because with the help of core needle biopsies we get tissue, so we will be able to categorize the tumor better, and we can do the ERP or HER study also. So FNAC is still very useful, we are doing it, but it is gradually giving way to core needle biopsies. Core needle biopsies or FNACs, they have to be done on a lesion, either palpable or mammographically detected. It cannot be done, you know.
Thank you.
Now may I request Dr. P. Behura to present a memento to the speaker, Dr. A.K. Malhotra. Please. May we now request Dr. B.P. Nanda, Chief Medical Superintendent, Agra, to please come up on stage and present the memento to our chairpersons, Dr. P. Behura and Dr. Amitabh Ray. Sir, please.